Good morning, Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church. This is Thursday, the 7th of January, 2021. Moses is trying to keep the people somehow on a path forward, keep them together, worshiping one God, following one set of rules. We know how hard that is. Yesterday in our country, the peaceful transition of power from one administration to another was seriously threatened as the U.S. Capitol building was taken over. Wow, people can come apart. People can have bitter disagreements. In this case, in the book of Leviticus, God isn't going to allow those kind of bitter disagreements. The side that isn't with God is against God and will be consumed. You don't get to make it up as you go along. It's a very harsh time. We wouldn't stand for that. We're a land of freedom, free people, free to do things even that in retrospect may appear destructive, criminal, or just plain foolish. But back to the book of Leviticus. Chapters 8 through 10 deal with the priesthood. We've looked at sin offerings, burnt offerings, well-being offerings, grain offerings, and guilt offerings, all these different categories of offerings, and the different animals that can be offered for different kinds of things, the different kinds of flour, the different directions, and you can read 1 through 7 in detail if you really like to. I like to think that chapters 1 through 7 are good reading material for when I'm waiting for that melatonin to kick in and I just can't quite doze off. I know it's not fair to say, right, that the Word of God could be used to put people to sleep, but there are a number of passages that certain challenge the mind when it's just so repetitive. 8 through 10 deals with the single theme of the priesthood. It starts off chapter 8 with the rites of ordination, what the priests will wear, Moses' role in dressing the priests in the official vestments. I know something about ordinations. Ordinations occur when a person has been called by a higher authority, and in the case of a Lutheran minister, it's a dual call. It's understood that the call has come through the Spirit of God by Christ himself to the individual, and that call has been certified by a process within the church that includes that 4-year master's degree. There's no other master's that requires 3 full years in an internship like that. In medicine, you'd have an MD or DO behind your name by that time. You'd still have your residency to do. Ministers do concurrent residency the first 2 years of seminary. But after those 4 years, there's the ordination examination, in which a commission of people from the church, from the seminary, from the synod or district will meet together and then essentially grill that person for a couple of hours and really find out whether or not they deserve to be an ordained minister in the Lutheran Church. Some of my colleagues did not make it. 4 years of schooling, and they were told, we don't think you're ready, or we don't think you should ever be a Lutheran minister. Devastating to have invested that kind of time and money and energy and then be told no. And I've been very critical of that process, that there needs to be ways, the checkpoints, that if someone really isn't fit, that needs to have come out by the end of the first year, the second at the very latest. But by the time a person's done an internship, if they don't self-deselect, they should be allowed to go on, finish that 4th year, and then be certified for ordination. So that's the process of preparing for ordination. Then the assignment comes. And for us in Lutheran Church, ordination only comes after a congregation says, we want you to be our pastor. Now, there are other kinds of ordained service. There is missionary service, and foreign service in hunger and relief work. There is service within the church structure, service within the teaching of the seminaries, that is. But most of those require that you spend at least 2 or 3 years in a parish as a pastor first. After all, seminary's job is to prepare people for ordination into word and sacrament ministry. That is to say, leading Sunday morning, doing the preaching, doing Holy Communion, doing baptisms, presiding over funerals, over weddings, preaching, teaching, and administering the sacraments, and providing for the pastoral care of the people. Home visits, eating cookies with Christy, who's 94 years old, and making sure she's okay once a month. Those are all part of the pastoral ministry for which ordination primarily exists. Well, I was assigned to the Ohio district of the American Lutheran Church. The Ohio district bishop, Bernie Bain, thought that it would be good to have somebody from each of the seminaries. Went out to West Virginia to Marshall University, where the district convention took place, and people would say, well, you came out of a seminary in Berkeley. Why would we want one of you? Why would we want a California liberal in Ohio, or or West Virginia, or any of the areas within the Ohio Synod? And I said, well, I don't know. Your bishop drafted me, and it's his job to make sure that I get an interview for a call. A year of waiting, it never came. I asked to be redrafted into Southern California West because my wife was getting her master's at California State University, Hayward. And I was privileged to attend the election at a synod assembly of Nelson Trout, the only black bishop in the American Lutheran Church. He had been a preacher at a seminary, and in the best style of black Baptist preaching with Lutheran theology, a most amazing man. He just wowed us, and I loved Nelson Trout dearly, and Nelson Trout's signature appears on my ordination, and I am deeply, deeply indebted to that man for the example of ministry and of preaching, his understanding of grace. Wow. Thank you, Dr. Trout. God rest in peace. But I was ordained then. I was ordained at the seminary, which is rare. Most ordination takes place at a home church. And I didn't really have a home church because I came to Lutheranism late. So I was ordained at the seminary. And my parents were there. My father came forward and laid hands on me. And then the stole was placed on me by my wife. And the stole that the pastor wears, which goes down both sides, a deacon's stole will go across diagonally. A pastor's stole, as you've seen on Sunday, is worn straight down. And that was placed on me for the first time, signaling that I had been called not just by the church, but by a church, a congregation, Grace Lutheran Church, Ridgecrest, California. And then after that, we packed up our few things and drove to Ridgecrest, out 2 hours east of Bakersfield, and began our life and ministry there with the people of Grace. Ordained service began. Now, back to Nehemiah. That's kind of Leviticus. Rather long introduction, isn't it? Nonetheless, the selection of ordination is very different in Leviticus. It is, like being a king, an inherited thing. Moses and Aaron are from the tribe of Levi. Moses has a different job. His job is to be the deliverer from Egypt to freedom, and to be the intermediary between God and the people. Brought the law to them, so he's often called Moses the deliverer, Moses the lawgiver. But Moses' brother Aaron and the sons of Aaron, which are many, they're going to be the ones who then inherit this, and their sons and their sons and their sons, all the way down, clear down to the time of Jesus, where we find out that Jesus' mother is from this family of Levitic priests, where Elizabeth, Mary's cousin, and her husband are Levites. And in fact, Elizabeth's husband Zechariah was one of the priests serving in the temple, and when he was told that he's going to have a baby, he laughs because he's old, and he's struck mute until the baby, who becomes John the Baptizer, is born, and then he gets his voice back. This coming Sunday, we have John the Baptizer appearing again. He appeared in Advent, and he appears this time on the Baptism of Jesus Sunday, the first Sunday of Epiphany. But I'll get more into the ordination details tomorrow. That's some background then on who can be ordained a priest in Israel and who can be ordained a minister in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. See you tomorrow.